Have you ever truly stopped to consider the origins of the legal systems that govern, well, pretty much everything in our
It's
lives?
something we take for granted usually.
Exactly. We often think of law as this modern, logical thing, but what if its true roots run far deeper, maybe back to ancient orders,
Mm.
and are far more surprising than conventional history suggests?
That's quite a thought.
Well, today on the deep dive, our mission is to explore sources that uncover a really provocative narrative. Audacious, even.
Right.
Now, before we jump in, it's really vital to remember we're looking at a highly unconventional interpretation here.
Yes, absolutely key.
Our goal, like always, is just to present the arguments found in these sources. We're not endorsing them, but we want you, our listener, to fully grasp this particular viewpoint.
It's about understanding the perspective itself.
Precisely. And this narrative makes a compelling case, arguing that our modern legal world is a direct descendant of powerful ancient orders, specifically the Knights Templar and later the Freemasons. And it all seems to pivot around a very specific London landmark. It's a fascinating, if alternative, way to view the foundations of society. So let's start peeling back the layers on this.
Okay. Where do we begin?
To really get into this, we have to go back, way back, to an order that, at its peak, seemed to wield almost unbelievable power and influence, the Knights Templar.
A household name, but maybe not in this context.
Right. Our source presents them not just as, historical figures, but as the absolute bedrock of this whole lineage we're exploring. They're painted as the original players in this long-running, complex thing called the game.
And what's really striking in our source is how they're described, not just as that religious military order we usually hear about.
How so?
Well, this perspective frames them as the primary corporate and banking arm of the OK Club during their cycle.
Okay, hold on. The OK Club.
Yep.
Cycle. We need to unpack those terms from the source.
Definitely. So the OK Club isn't a standard historical term. Our source seems to suggest it's this shadowy, overarching ancient group working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And cycle apparently refers to specific periods of their influence and operation through history.
Okay. And the Templars' name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon.
That gets a deeper symbolic read, too. Not just a title, but, according to the source, a literal declaration of their allegiance to the dormant monarch, Christ, and their duty to build his temple, the game.
The game again?
Yes, and the game here isn't just a casual word. It implies this highly orchestrated, long-term strategy by these groups. It suggests societal structures, like the legal system, weren't just organic, but were deliberately built for specific, maybe hidden ends.
Wow. So not just faith and fighting. It was about strategy, finance, structure, right from the start.
That's the picture the source paints.
And their London base, the Temple Church, which people still know today, what's its significance here? It sounds like it's more than just an old church in this narrative.
Oh, absolutely. The Temple Church is described in the source as an architectural cypher, meaning its design holds hidden symbolic messages. Its round shape, for instance, not just style. In this interpretation, it was a model of the dome.
The dome, like the dome of the rock.
That seems to be the implication, linking it to ancient sacred geometry, perhaps deeper knowledge. And beyond its looks, its function was critical. It was the original Royal Treasury.
The Royal Treasury, run by the Templars.
That's the claim. And connecting this to the bigger picture the source draws, they weren't just storing gold, they were pioneers. This narrative calls them the first international bankers.
Wow.
Effectively, the original masters of the financial game.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't just playing the game, they were shaping it, laying down the financial foundations for whatever this game was supposed to become.
Okay, so the Templars. Financial and military powerhouses, secret allegiances, building the game. But then history tells us, 1307, they faced this dramatic public downfall.
Right, the arrests, the trials.
Or did they? Our source gives a completely different, really audacious take on that moment, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
According to this specific interpretation, that public discussion in 1307, it wasn't a defeat at all.
Not a defeat. Then what?
It was, and this is the core claim, a carefully planned strategic rebranding.
A rebranding? Why?
The motivation, the source says, was clear.
Mm.
They had simply become too powerful and too visible. Their influence made them a target. So to keep operating effectively, they orchestrated their own demise to move their operations into the shadows.
Orchestrated their own demise. That's That's incredible. Suggests amazing foresight and control.
It definitely challenges the standard historical narrative.
It really does. I mean, to vanish from public view like that. Wow. Okay, so how? How did this incredibly powerful group supposedly continue its work, its influence, under a new hidden identity? How did they pull off that transition?
Well, this is where, in the source's story, the legal system becomes central. They pass the torch, so to speak, to themselves in a new disguise. Remember their headquarters, the Temple Church we talked about?
Yeah.
It was eventually leased to colleges of lawyers, which evolved into the Inns of Court.
The Inns of Court, where lawyers train and operate in London.
Exactly. Think about the symbolism there. The Templars, according to the source, basically traded their swords for law books.
So, not just a change of tenants.
Not according to this view, no. It signifies a direct, intentional succession. The source presents modern judges and lawyers operating from the temple today as the direct successors to the Knights Templar.
Wow.
Their function just shifted fundamentally from military enforcement to legal control. This move from visible soldiers to an invisible, pervasive legal authority. That's where the source suggests the game really started to lock things down.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. So the Templars subtly shift from battlefield to courtroom, setting up this legal foundation. Where do the Freemasons fit in? They're always wrapped in mystery. How do they connect to this evolving game?
Right. The Freemasons. In this narrative, they're described as the modern, more esoteric branch of this same lineage.
More esoteric?
Yes. And again, even their name is presented as having a hidden layer. To free the Masons, Moon the Rock of Chains, is called a cypher by the source.
A cypher? What's that supposed to mean?
Well, it's interpreted not just literally, but symbolically, implying their real purpose is maybe liberating humanity from certain chains, maybe spiritual, maybe material, which the source links to symbols like the moon and the rock, possibly representing earthly limitations or control.
Okay.
So from this perspective, the Freemasons are the intellectual and structural force. They are the architects and engineers of the game, the keepers of the sacred geometry. Their job is building and shaping the underlying structure of it all.
The builders of this new phase. Okay, and when, according to these sources, did this modern game actually kick off? Was there a specific moment?
The official start of the modern game is pinpointed quite clearly. It's the formal founding of their first Grand Lodge in London in 1717.
1717. Why is that so significant?
Well, from the source's viewpoint, it wasn't just starting a club. It's seen as a unification of the four great bays of power under a single cohesive command structure.
Bays of power. What are those?
The source implies these might represent distinct centers of influence, maybe financial, political, military, spiritual, that were separate before, but were now brought under one unified direction. It's presented as the moment these threads, the Templar legacy and the Masonic architecture, really merged into one overarching system. And what's fascinating here is how it all keeps circling back to London.
Right, which brings us straight to Temple Bar, a name people might know from London history, but its significance in this story sounds much bigger than just an old gate. What's its role?
Temple Bar, according to these sources, is described as essentially the jurisdictional gateway to this central hub of power.
More than just a landmark, then.
Much more. From this perspective, it's the symbolic gate to the elite's most powerful enclave, the Sovereign City of London Corporation.
The City of London, the financial district.
Exactly. Our source emphasizes that to pass through Temple Bar is to enter the legal and financial heart of the game itself. It's the physical and symbolic doorway into where this whole system allegedly runs from. A threshold into a distinct jurisdiction, almost like a state within a state, that serves as the nerve center.
So London isn't just a city in this narrative, it's the city, the absolute epicenter of this alleged global system, with the temple, the Inns of Court, Temple Bar right at the core, like the control room.
Precisely. It's presented as the central point from which everything else radiates, the operational base for this huge, interwoven structure.
Okay, that leads to the big question then. How does this very specific, very London-centric history translate, according to these sources, into a global system of law that affects everyone, everywhere?
Well, if we tie all these threads together, the sources synthesize this into a really profound and, again, quite challenging conclusion. They argue that the entire global legal system, which operates under maritime law, is a web that radiates outwards for this single point in London.
Maritime law, like laws about ships.
Not quite, or not just that in this context. Our source uses maritime law more broadly. It seems to refer to an underlying legal framework based on commerce, contracts, international agreements, the law of trade that crosses borders. The source claims this is the fundamental jurisdiction for global governance, different from national common law.
Okay, so a commercial-based global system.
That's the idea presented. So it's not just a historical footnote. It's a claim about how the world is fundamentally governed now. It's a system, this narrative says, founded by the Templars, architected by the Freemasons, and administered from the sacred ground of the temple.
That's quite a lineage.
And to really drive it home, the source concludes with this incredibly stark description. It is the ultimate barrier, the bar of the penitentiary.
The bar of the penitentiary. Wow.
Yeah, it's not just dramatic language. It captures the idea that this system, seen through this lens, isn't purely about justice. It's viewed as a profound mechanism of control, like a subtle prison without walls, governing our lives through these legal structures.
What an absolutely extraordinary journey through this alternative view we've taken today.
It's definitely a different perspective.
We started with the Knights Templar, painted as this huge financial and spiritual power starting the game. Then traced their alleged strategic rebranding into the legal profession, taking over the temple.
The shift from swords to law books.
Exactly. Then the Freemasons emerged, the architects of the modern system, unifying things in London. And it all centers on Temple Bar, the gateway to this global legal web supposedly radiating out everywhere.
This deep dive into these particular sources certainly pushes us to think about the implications, doesn't it?
It does.
It asks us to look again at the origins of our legal frameworks, the power structures behind them. It's a lens to re-examine what we think we know about how the world works, and maybe the hidden influences that shaped it.
So maybe the next time you deal with a legal term or even just walk past a court building, you might think back to this deep dive. Could the echoes of these ancient, powerful orders really be shaping the rules we live by today?
It's a question raised by these sources.
And what does it mean for you, listening right now, to be governed by a system described in such stark terms by our source as the ultimate barrier, the bar of the penitentiary? It's definitely a thought to chew on. Makes you reevaluate the very ground beneath our feet, legally speaking.